When I walked into that Los Angeles courthouse on the morning of October 15th, carrying my daughter Sofia in my arms, I had no idea that in 3 hours our lives would change forever. My name is Sofia Chen. I'm 34 years old. And for 8 years I've been fighting for justice for my daughter who was born blind due to medical negligence, Sofia. Squeezed my hand tightly when she heard the deep voice of Dr. Richard Martinez echoing through the courtroom. "This immigrant family is clearly after easy money," he declared to his 5 lawyers in Italian suits. "A blind child isn't worth the $3 million compensation they're demanding." I felt my heart break, seeing how he spoke about my daughter as if she were an object. Sofia, even without sight, turned her little face toward the cruel voice. Her small hands began to tremble. Prosecutor Daniel Santos, a tall, 45-year-old man known for destroying families like ours in court, smiled with satisfaction. "Dr. Martinez is right. You transferred your daughter too late from County General Hospital. Her blindness is not St. Vincent Hospital's responsibility." My wife May squeezed my hands tightly. We were there representing all the poor families who never get justice against the powerful. We saved every penny for 8 years, sold our small restaurant, all to pay lawyers who could give Sofia a chance. If you have children, you know what it's like to see your baby suffering and not be able to do anything. Leave a like if you believe every child deserves justice, regardless of their family's background. The journey that brought us to this moment began exactly 8 years, 2 months, and 3 days ago. I remember because that date is burned into my memory like a scar that never heals. March 15th, 2016, 2:17 a.m. May woke me up with a gasp that cut through the silence of our small apartment in Chinatown. "Lee, the baby is coming," she whispered, her face contorted with pain. Her water had broken, and contractions were coming every 3 minutes. We rushed to County General Hospital, the only place we could afford with our limited insurance. But when we arrived at 2:45 a.m., the emergency room was chaos. Gang violence had erupted in East LA, and gunshot victims were being rushed in every few minutes. "You need to wait," the triage nurse told us without even looking up from her paperwork. "We don't have any beds in maternity. The baby isn't coming that fast anyway." But May's contractions were getting stronger. She gripped my hand so hard I thought she might break my fingers. "Please," I begged the nurse. "This is our first baby. Something feels wrong." The nurse finally looked at us and I saw the dismissal in her eyes. 2 young Chinese immigrants with broken English and cheap clothes. "Sir, first babies take time. Go home and come back when the contractions are 2 minutes apart." By 3:30 a.m., May was crying in pain. The contractions were now every 90 seconds, and she was bleeding more than seemed normal. I drove back to County General, but this time they told us something that changed everything. "We're full," the same nurse said. "You need to go to a private hospital. St. Vincent's is only 10 minutes away." I had $847 in my checking account. St. Vincent's was where rich people went to have their babies, not struggling immigrants like us. But seeing May in agony, I would have sold my soul to get her help. We arrived at St. Vincent's at 4:10 a.m. The lobby was pristine white marble with crystal chandeliers. Fresh orchids adorned every surface. It looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. I had never felt more out of place in my life. Dr. Richard Martinez was the attending physician. Even at 4 a.m., he looked perfectly groomed, his silver hair styled and his white coat spotless. But when he saw us, a young Chinese couple in secondhand clothes, his expression hardened. "Why did you wait so long to come in?" he asked, not bothering to hide his irritation. "She's been in labor for how long?" "Since 2 a.m., I answered in my accented English. "We went to County General first, but they said—" "I don't care what they said," Martinez interrupted. "You should have come here immediately. Now it's going to be more complicated." He examined May for less than 5 minutes before declaring that she needed an emergency C-section. "The baby is in distress," he said, already walking toward the door. "We need to operate now." Everything happened so fast after that. May was wheeled into surgery while I sat alone in the waiting room, surrounded by luxury I couldn't afford, praying to every god I could think of. Sofia was born at 6:47 a.m. on March 15, 2016. I will never forget that moment because it was both the happiest and most devastating of my life. When Dr. Martinez emerged from the operating room, his face told me everything before he said a word. "Mr. Chen," he began, avoiding my eyes. The delivery was complicated. There was prolonged oxygen deprivation during the surgical procedure. "Your daughter has suffered damage to her optic nerves." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What does that mean?" "It means she's blind. Permanently." I felt the world collapse around me. But you said it was just complicated." "You said—" "Sometimes complications have lasting effects," Martinez said coldly. "These things happen. She's alive, and that's what matters." But I knew something was wrong. In the months that followed, I would discover just how wrong everything had been that night. Dr. Martinez handed me a bill for $87,000 before I even held my daughter. "Your insurance covers about 40%, he said. "You'll need to arrange payment for the rest." When I finally saw Sofia in the NICU, she was so tiny, so perfect, connected to machines that beeped and hummed around her. Her eyes were open, but they didn't track movement. They didn't see light. They didn't see me. May blamed herself. If I had been stronger, if I had gone to the hospital earlier— "No," I told her firmly. "This isn't your fault. This isn't anyone's fault." But I was wrong about that last part. 3 months later, during a routine follow-up appointment at Children's Hospital, Dr. Sarah Williams, a pediatric ophthalmologist, examined Sofia's case files. What she found made her face go pale. "Mr. Chen," she said carefully, "I need to ask you some questions about Sofia's birth. According to these records, there was a significant delay between when your wife arrived at St. Vincent's and when the C-section was performed." "About 2 hours," I confirmed. Dr. Martinez said he needed to prepare. Dr. Williams frowned. 2 hours is unusual for an emergency C-section, especially when fetal distress has been identified. The standard of care requires intervention within 30 minutes of distress detection. She pulled up Sofia's medical records on her computer. There are also some inconsistencies in the timing documented here. The initial assessment shows fetal distress at 4:15 a.m., but the surgery didn't begin until 6:30 a.m. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means that if proper protocol had been followed, Sofia's blindness could have been prevented. "Mr. Chen, I believe your daughter was the victim of medical malpractice." That word, malpractice, opened a door I never thought I'd have to walk through. For the next 4 years, it would consume our lives, drain our savings, and test everything we believed about justice in America. The first lawyer I consulted, Marcus Reed, was blunt. Medical malpractice cases against hospital systems like St. Vincent's are nearly impossible to win. They have unlimited resources and the best legal teams money can buy. Dr. Martinez, in particular, has never lost a malpractice suit. "But you just looked at the evidence," I protested. "The timing is clear. They waited too long." "Evidence and winning are two different things," Reed replied. "These hospitals know how to make evidence disappear, witnesses forget, and experts change their opinions. I'm sorry, but I can't take this case." Over the next 18 months, I heard the same response from 12 different lawyers. "Too risky. Not enough evidence. Go up against St. Vincent's? Are you crazy?" Meanwhile, Sofia grew into a remarkable little girl despite her blindness. She learned to navigate our apartment by touch and sound. She could identify people by their footsteps, their breathing patterns, even their emotional state. It was as if losing her sight had awakened other senses that the rest of us didn't even know existed. "Daddy," she said to me one evening when she was 3 years old, "why does the sad man keep calling?" "What sad man, sweetheart?" "The man on the phone. He calls every week, and his voice is full of dark clouds." I realized she was talking about the bill collector from St. Vincent's Hospital. The $52,000 we still owed was growing with interest and fees. But somehow, Sofia had picked up on the emotional weight of those calls, even though she was just a toddler. By the time Sofia turned 4, I had spent our entire savings on medical consultations and legal fees. May was working double shifts at a garment factory, and I was driving for Uber 18 hours a day. We were drowning financially, but I couldn't give up the fight for my daughter's future. That's when I met Dr. Rebecca Foster, a retired pediatric surgeon who specialized in birth trauma cases. She agreed to review Sofia's medical records pro bono after hearing our story. "Mr. Chen," she said after studying the files for 3 hours, "this is one of the clearest cases of medical negligence I've ever seen. The delay in surgical intervention directly caused your daughter's blindness. Any competent medical professional would confirm this. Then why won't any lawyer?" Dr. Foster's expression darkened. "Because Dr. Martinez is the nephew of Vincent Castellano, who owns not just St. Vincent's Hospital, but a network of medical facilities across California. He has political connections that reach the governor's office and judges throughout the state system." She leaned forward. "But there's something else you should know. Sofia isn't the first child this has happened to." Dr. Foster pulled out a folder containing photocopies of medical journals and court documents. "In the past 10 years, there have been 7 similar cases involving Dr. Martinez. Birth complications that could have been prevented with proper care. All 7 families were immigrant families with limited resources. What happened to them? They were all quietly settled out of court for minimal amounts after being worn down by legal costs. The families were required to sign non-disclosure agreements, so they can't discuss their cases publicly. I felt sick, so he's been doing this for years. It appears so. And he gets away with it because he targets families who can't fight back effectively." That night, I sat in Sofia's room watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. She would never see a sunset, never see her mother's face, never see the world in all its beauty. And it was all because one man thought immigrant families were expendable. "I'm going to fight for you," I whispered to her sleeping form. "Even if it takes everything we have, I'm going to make sure this never happens to another child." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, a nurse who had been working at St. Vincent's the night Sofia was born, contacted me through Dr. Foster. She was retiring and said she had something important to tell me. We met at a coffee shop in Pasadena on a rainy Tuesday morning. Maria was a small woman in her 60s with kind eyes and work-worn hands. "Mr. Chen," she began quietly, "I've carried this guilt for 4 years. I was the surgical nurse in Dr. Martinez's team the night your daughter was born." My heart raced. "What happened that night?" "Dr. Martinez was drunk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He had been at a medical conference reception until 2 a.m. When he came in to handle your wife's case, I could smell alcohol on his breath." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "He operated on my wife while drunk?" "That's not the worst part," Maria continued. "When he first examined your wife at 4:15 a.m., he correctly identified fetal distress. But instead of operating immediately, he went to his office to sober up with coffee and cold showers." "For how long?" 2 hours and 15 minutes. He told everyone that he was reviewing the case and preparing for surgery, but I saw him in his office. He was trying to get sober enough to operate safely. Why didn't you report this? Maria's eyes filled with tears. I was afraid. Dr. Martinez has connections everywhere. He could have had me fired, blacklisted from nursing. I have 5 grandchildren to support. I was a coward. But you're telling me now, because I can't live with it anymore. That beautiful little girl lost her sight because I was too scared to speak up. If there's any way to make this right, I want to help. Maria had kept detailed personal notes from that night, including exact times and observations about Dr. Martinez's condition. She also had photographs she had taken of Sofia's medical chart before it was officially completed. These photos show the original timestamps, she explained. Dr. Martinez went back later and altered the medical records to make it look like the delay was due to surgical complications, not his negligence. With Maria's testimony and evidence, I finally found a lawyer willing to take our case. Patricia Morrison was a 42-year-old attorney who specialized in David versus Goliath cases. She had built her reputation taking on powerful institutions that preyed on vulnerable families. Mr. Chen, she told me during our first meeting, I'm going to be honest with you. This case will be the fight of our lives. They're going to attack your credibility, your immigration status, your financial situation. They'll try to make you look like opportunistic foreigners trying to cash in on a tragic but unavoidable medical outcome. Will we win? With Maria's testimony and the evidence she's provided, we have a real chance. But you need to be prepared for them to fight dirty. These people don't just want to win. They want to destroy anyone who challenges them. The preparation for trial took 18 months. Patricia and her team interviewed dozens of medical experts, obtained hospital records through court orders, and built a case that clearly showed Dr. Martinez's negligence had directly caused Sofia's blindness. But St. Vincent's Hospital and Dr. Martinez fought back with everything they had. They hired the most expensive legal team in California, led by Jonathan Whitmore, a man known for destroying plaintiffs in medical malpractice cases. They filed motion after motion to delay the trial, challenge evidence, and discredit our witnesses. They hired private investigators to dig into our personal lives, looking for anything they could use against us. Most devastating of all, they somehow convinced Maria Santos to recant her testimony. When we contacted her 2 weeks before the trial, she claimed she had misremembered the events of that night and could no longer testify on our behalf. They got to her, Patricia told me grimly. Probably threatened her pension or her family's jobs. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Without Maria's testimony, our case became much more difficult. We still had the medical evidence showing the timing discrepancies, but we no longer had an insider witness to explain what had really happened that night. Do we still have a chance? I asked. We do, Patricia replied. But it's going to come down to whether the jury believes a hardworking immigrant family or a prestigious hospital with unlimited resources. The trial was scheduled to begin on October 15, 2024, exactly 8 years and 7 months after Sofia was born. By then, she was a bright, articulate 8-year-old who had learned to navigate the world with remarkable skill despite her blindness. She attended a special school for visually impaired children, where she excelled in music and mathematics. She could play piano pieces that amazed her teachers and solve math problems in her head faster than sighted children her age. But more remarkably, Sofia seemed to have developed an almost supernatural ability to read people's emotions and intentions. She could tell when someone was lying, when someone was sad, when someone needed comfort. It was as if her blindness had opened doorways to understanding that the rest of us couldn't access. "Daddy," she told me the night before the trial, "tomorrow is going to be hard, but good things will happen. I can feel it." "How can you be so sure, sweetheart?" She smiled, that radiant smile that could light up any room. Because the truth always wins in the end. It just takes time. If only I had known how prophetic those words would prove to be. The morning of October 15th dawned gray and overcast in Los Angeles. As we approached the courthouse, I could see news vans lined up outside. Word had leaked about the case, and it had become a symbol of the David versus Goliath battle between immigrant families and the medical establishment. Dr. Richard Martinez arrived in a black Mercedes, surrounded by his legal team. At 58, he still cut an impressive figure, tall, silver-haired, wearing a $5,000 suit and a confident smile that suggested he had never doubted the outcome. Prosecutor Daniel Santos was already inside, reviewing his notes. At 45, Santos had built a reputation as the most ruthless prosecutor in the medical malpractice division. His record showed an 89% success rate defending hospitals and doctors against frivolous lawsuits. Santos was known for his psychological warfare tactics. He would attack plaintiffs' credibility, question their motives, and paint them as opportunistic foreigners trying to exploit the American legal system for financial gain. As we entered the courtroom, I felt the weight of 8 years of struggle pressing down on my shoulders. This was our one chance for justice, our one opportunity to make Dr. Martinez pay for what he had done to Sofia. The jury selection had taken 3 days. Patricia had fought hard to ensure we had at least some jurors who might sympathize with our situation. Working parents, people who had struggled with medical bills, immigrants who understood what it was like to be dismissed by the system. But Santos had been just as strategic, ensuring the jury included several wealthy professionals who might be more inclined to trust doctors and hospitals over complaining patients. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Santos began his opening statement. You are about to witness a tragic attempt by the Chen family to profit from an unfortunate but unavoidable medical outcome. He walked slowly in front of the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. The Chen family arrived at St. Vincent's Hospital at 4:10 a.m. after spending crucial hours at another hospital. By the time they reached Dr. Martinez, the window for preventing complications had already closed. Sofia sat between May and me, perfectly still but alert. I could see her head turning slightly as she tracked Santos's movement around the courtroom. Dr. Richard Martinez, Santos continued, is one of the most respected obstetricians in California. He has delivered over 4,000 babies during his 25-year career, with an exemplary record of patient safety and care. Santos pointed toward Dr. Martinez, who nodded solemnly from the defense table. On the night in question, Dr. Martinez did everything medically possible to save both mother and child. The unfortunate outcome, while tragic, was not the result of negligence, but rather the consequence of delayed care at the previous hospital. I felt my jaw clench. The lies were starting already. The Chen family is asking you to award them $3 million based on their claim that Dr. Martinez somehow caused their daughter's blindness through negligence. But the evidence will show that Dr. Martinez followed all proper protocols and that any delay in treatment was due to the complexity of the case, not medical error. Santos paused dramatically. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not about justice. It's about a family trying to win the litigation lottery at the expense of a dedicated physician who has spent his career helping families like theirs. The opening statement continued for 40 minutes, with Santos systematically laying out his strategy to discredit our case. He would argue that Sofia's blindness was caused by delays at County General Hospital, that Dr. Martinez had acted appropriately given the circumstances, and that we were simply looking for someone to blame for a tragic but unavoidable outcome. When Patricia stood to give our opening statement, I could feel the energy in the room shift. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, 8 years ago, Lee and Mei Chen did what any expectant parents would do when complications arose during childbirth. They sought the best medical care available for their unborn child. Patricia walked over to our table and placed her hand gently on Sofia's shoulder. What they found instead was a system that values profit over patience, prestige over care, and reputation over responsibility. She turned back to the jury. The evidence will show that Dr. Richard Martinez was intoxicated when he examined Mei Chen on the morning of March 15, 2016. It will show that he delayed life-saving surgery for over 2 hours while he attempted to sober up. And it will show that this delay directly caused Sofia Chen to lose her sight permanently. Several jurors leaned forward, clearly interested in this allegation. You will hear testimony from medical experts who will confirm that Sofia's blindness could have been completely prevented with proper care. You will see evidence that Dr. Martinez altered medical records to cover up his negligence. And you will learn that this was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of substandard care that has affected multiple families. Patricia's voice grew stronger. This case is not about money. It's about accountability. It's about ensuring that no other child suffers what Sofia has suffered. And it's about a little girl who deserves to know that when powerful people do wrong, they can still be held responsible. As Patricia returned to our table, I saw several jurors looking at Sofia with sympathy. But I also saw skepticism in other faces. Santos had been effective in planting doubt about our motives. The first week of testimony was a medical education for all of us. Patricia called expert witnesses who explained the standard of care for emergency C-sections, the timeline that should have been followed, and the specific medical errors that had caused Sofia's blindness. Dr. Amanda Richardson, a leading expert in birth trauma, testified that the delay in Sofia's surgery was unconscionable and completely preventable. In cases of fetal distress, Dr. Richardson explained, the standard of care requires surgical intervention within 30 minutes of diagnosis. Any delay beyond that window significantly increases the risk of permanent injury to the child. In your opinion, Patricia asked, could Sofia Chen's blindness have been prevented? Absolutely. If proper protocols had been followed, Sofia would have normal vision today. But Santos was merciless in his cross-examination. He attacked Dr. Richardson's credentials, questioned her review of the medical records, and suggested that she was a hired gun who made her living testifying against doctors. Dr. Richardson, Santos asked, how much are you being paid for your testimony today? I receive a standard expert witness fee of $500 per hour for my time. And how many times this year have you testified against physicians in malpractice cases? Approximately 15 times. So testifying against doctors is quite profitable for you, isn't it? Patricia objected, but the damage was done. Santos had managed to make Dr. Richardson look like someone who profited from attacking physicians. This pattern continued throughout the first week. Every expert witness we presented was attacked as biased, profit-motivated, or inadequately informed about the specifics of Sofia's case. Meanwhile, Santos presented his own parade of experts who testified that Dr. Martinez had acted appropriately given the circumstances. They claimed that the delay in surgery was due to the complexity of the case, not negligence, and that Sofia's blindness was an unfortunate but unavoidable outcome. Dr. Michael Thompson, the head of obstetrics at UCLA Medical Center, testified that Dr. Martinez followed all appropriate protocols and made medically sound decisions throughout the procedure. But Patricia's cross-examination revealed that Dr. Thompson was a longtime friend and colleague of Dr. Martinez, and that he had never actually reviewed the original medical records from Sofia's birth. By the end of the first week, the case was essentially a stalemate. Both sides had presented medical experts who contradicted each other. The jury appeared confused and unsure about the technical aspects of the case. That's when Santos made his most devastating move. On Monday of the second week, he called Dr. Martinez to the witness stand. The doctor took the oath wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit and an expression of calm confidence. "Dr. Martinez," Santos began, "please tell the jury about your medical background and qualifications." "I graduated from Harvard Medical School in 1991, Martinez replied in a smooth, professional voice. "I completed my residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Johns Hopkins Hospital, followed by a fellowship in high-risk pregnancies at Stanford University Medical Center." "How many babies have you delivered during your career?" "Approximately 4,200 with an exemplary safety record. I have never had a mother die under my care, and serious complications are extremely rare." Santos spent an hour establishing Dr. Martinez's credentials and reputation. By the time he was finished, the jury was looking at Martinez as if he were a medical saint. "Now, Dr. Martinez, let's discuss the events of March 15, 2016. Can you tell us what happened when the Chen family arrived at St. Vincent's Hospital?" Martinez leaned forward slightly, speaking directly to the jury. Mrs. Chen arrived in active labor with complications that were already well established. Based on her condition and the reports from County General Hospital, it was clear that significant time had already been lost. "What was your assessment of the situation?" "The baby was in fetal distress, but I needed to evaluate the full situation before proceeding with surgery. Emergency C-sections carry significant risks, and rushing into surgery without proper preparation can cause more harm than good." This was a complete lie, but Martinez delivered it with such medical authority that several jurors were nodding along. "How long did your evaluation take?" "Approximately 2 hours, which is standard for a complex case like this. During that time, I consulted with other specialists, reviewed Mrs. Chen's medical history, and prepared the surgical team for the procedure." "And the outcome?" Martinez's expression grew somber. "Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, the baby had already suffered oxygen deprivation that caused damage to her optic nerves. This was a tragic but unavoidable result of the delayed care she had received before arriving at our hospital. It was a masterful performance." Martinez came across as a caring, competent physician who had done everything possible to help a family in crisis. But I knew he was lying about everything. When Patricia cross-examined Martinez, she tried to poke holes in his story. "Dr. Martinez, you testified that you spent 2 hours evaluating Mrs. Chen's condition before surgery. Isn't it true that hospital records show you left the delivery floor during that time?" "I may have stepped out briefly to consult with colleagues and review medical literature relevant to the case." "For how long?" "I don't recall exactly. Whatever time was necessary to ensure the best possible care." Patricia showed him copies of his keycard records, which showed he had entered and exited his private office multiple times during the 2 hours before surgery. "Dr. Martinez, these records show that you spent over 90 minutes in your private office during the time you claim to have been evaluating Mrs. Chen. What were you doing there?" "As I said, consulting with colleagues and reviewing medical literature." "Were you drinking alcohol, Dr. Martinez?" Santos immediately objected. "Your Honor, this is a baseless accusation with no foundation in evidence." "Sustained," the judge ruled. Patricia was frustrated. Without Maria Santos's testimony, she couldn't prove that Martinez had been intoxicated. The cross-examination continued for 3 hours, but Martinez stuck to his story and never admitted any wrongdoing. By the time he stepped down from the witness stand, I could see that several jurors believed him. His calm, professional demeanor contrasted sharply. That evening, Patricia was brutally honest with us. "Without Maria's testimony, this case is going to be very difficult to win. Martinez was convincing on the stand, and the jury seems inclined to trust him. "What about Sofia?" I asked. "Can she testify?" Patricia had been considering this option throughout the trial. "It's risky. She's only 8 years old, and Santos will try to make her testimony seem rehearsed or coached. But she might be our only chance to reach the jury on an emotional level." May was reluctant. "She's been through enough. I don't want her traumatized by that man's questions." But Sofia, who had been listening quietly, surprised us all. "I want to testify, Mommy. I want to tell them what happened." "Sweetheart, it will be very hard. The bad man will ask you difficult questions." Sofia nodded seriously. "I know, but I need to tell the truth. People need to hear it." That night, I sat with Sofia in her room as she prepared for bed. "Are you sure you want to do this tomorrow?" "Yes, Daddy. I've been waiting for this chance." "What do you mean?" She was quiet for a long moment. "There are things I can see that other people can't. Not with my eyes, but with my heart. Tomorrow, everyone will understand." I didn't know what she meant then, but I trusted my daughter completely. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread that the blind 8-year-old girl would be testifying, and media attention had intensified. Patricia called Sofia to the witness stand. Watching my tiny daughter walk confidently across the courtroom, guided only by the sound of Patricia's voice, was both heartbreaking and inspiring. The bailiff helped Sofia into the witness chair, which was too large for her small frame. Her legs didn't reach the floor, and she looked impossibly young and vulnerable. "Sofia," Patricia began gently, "can you tell us your name and age?" "My name is Sofia Chen, and I'm 8 years old." Her voice was clear and strong, carrying easily through the courtroom. "Sofia, do you remember being born?" Several jurors looked skeptical. How could anyone remember being born? But Sofia nodded seriously. "I remember being warm and safe in Mommy's tummy. Then everything got cold and scary. There was a man nearby who smelled like something yucky, and he was angry." Santos immediately objected. "Your Honor, this child cannot possibly remember events from her birth. This is clearly coach testimony." But the judge was intrigued. "I'll allow some leeway here." "Continue, counselor," Patricia continued. "Sofia, you say the man smelled like something yucky. What do you mean?" "Like the stuff Daddy drinks when he's really sad. But stronger and meaner." I realized she was describing the smell of alcohol. Even as a newborn, she had somehow detected Martinez's intoxication. "Sofia, can you tell when people are telling the truth or lying?" "Yes. Lies feel dark and heavy. Truth feels light and warm." "What do you feel about the people in this courtroom today?" Sofia turned her head slowly, as if scanning the room with senses beyond sight. "Most people here want to do the right thing. But there's one person who's surrounded by dark clouds of lies." She pointed directly toward Dr. Martinez. "That man over there. He's been lying about everything." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Martinez looked uncomfortable for the first time since the trial began. Santos quickly stood. "Objection. This is clearly rehearsed performance art, not legitimate testimony." But before the judge could rule, something extraordinary happened. Sofia stood up in the witness chair and pointed toward an empty corner of the courtroom. "There's an angel here," she said with absolute conviction. "He's tall and bright, and he's smiling at me." Every head in the courtroom turned toward the corner Sofia was indicating. Obviously, no one could see anything there. But Sofia continued, speaking with a clarity and authority that was remarkable for a child her age. "The angel is telling me that today is the day for truth. He says that lies always come into the light eventually, and today is that day." The courtroom was completely silent. Even Santos seemed at a loss for words. Sofia turned toward Dr. Martinez. The angel says that man has hurt other children besides me. He says there are more families who need justice. Martinez's face had gone pale. He whispered something urgently to one of his lawyers. The angel is also telling me about the man who's been asking the mean questions, Sofia continued, looking toward Santos. He says that man is carrying a lot of pain from when he was little. Someone hurt him, and now he hurts other people because he doesn't know how to stop. Santos's jaw dropped. His hands were visibly shaking. But Sofia wasn't finished. The angel says that everyone in this room has a choice today. They can choose truth or lies, love or anger, helping or hurting. She paused, her sightless eyes somehow seeming to look directly into the souls of everyone present. And he says that sometimes, when everything seems darkest, that's when the light shines brightest. At that moment, the most unexpected thing possible happened. Prosecutor Daniel Santos stood up slowly, walked to the center of the courtroom, and fell to his knees. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "This child is right about everything." The entire courtroom was in shocked silence. Santos, the most feared prosecutor in the medical malpractice division, was kneeling in the middle of the courtroom with tears streaming down his face. "Sofia is right about me," he continued. "I was abused as a child, and I've spent my entire career taking that pain out on families like the Chens. I've been defending doctors who don't deserve defense and destroying families who deserve justice." He turned toward Dr. Martinez, who was trying to appear calm but was clearly panicking. "And she's right about Dr. Martinez, too. 6 months ago, he approached me privately and offered me money to make sure I destroyed the Chen family's credibility. He knew they had a valid case, and he was willing to pay to cover it up." The courtroom exploded in shocked gasps and angry murmurs. Dr. Martinez's lawyers were frantically whispering to each other. Santos continued, his voice growing stronger. "I have recordings of our conversations. I have bank records showing payments from Dr. Martinez to a shell company I established, and I have evidence that he has done this before with other families." He pulled a briefcase from under the prosecutor's table. "Dr. Martinez has been systematically targeting immigrant families for substandard care because he knows they're least likely to fight back effectively. Sofia is the 7th child who has suffered permanent injury under his care." The judge was pounding his gavel, trying to restore order. "Mr. Santos, these are extremely serious allegations. Do you understand what you're saying?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'm confessing to accepting bribes and conspiring to obstruct justice. And I'm revealing that Dr. Richard Martinez has been committing medical malpractice specifically against vulnerable families for over a decade." Dr. Martinez jumped up from his chair. "This is insane! This man is clearly having some kind of breakdown." "Dr. Martinez," Santos interrupted, "explain to the court why you paid me $50,000 to ensure the Chen family would lose this case." Martinez's face went from pale to gray. His expensive lawyers were pulling him back into his chair, undoubtedly advising him to remain silent. But Santos wasn't finished. "Your Honor, I request an immediate recess so that I can turn over all evidence of Dr. Martinez's criminal behavior to the appropriate authorities. This case needs to be suspended while a criminal investigation takes place." The judge granted the recess, and the courtroom cleared in chaos. News reporters were rushing out to file their stories. Dr. Martinez was surrounded by his legal team, who were clearly in damage control mode. But the most remarkable moment came when Santos approached our table. He knelt down next to Sofia's chair. "Sofia, can you ever forgive me for trying to hurt you and your family?" Sofia reached out and touched his face gently. "You don't need my forgiveness," she said softly. "You need to forgive yourself. The little boy inside you who was hurt, he needs love, not anger." Santos began crying again, but these were tears of relief, not shame. How did you know? How could you possibly know about my childhood? The angel told me, Sofia replied simply. He said you have a good heart that got covered up by hurt. But good hearts can always be uncovered, if people are brave enough to try. The criminal investigation that followed Santos's revelations uncovered a conspiracy that shocked the medical community. Dr. Martinez had indeed been systematically providing substandard care to immigrant and low-income families while ensuring they couldn't seek justice through legal channels. Bank records showed that over the past 8 years, Martinez had paid bribes totaling $400,000 to prosecutors, medical examiners, and court officials to ensure that malpractice cases against him would fail. More devastating still, investigators found that Martinez had altered medical records in dozens of cases to cover up his negligence. He had a sophisticated system for changing timestamps, removing evidence of intoxication, and creating false documentation to support his version of events. The investigation revealed 7 other children who had suffered permanent injuries under Martinez's care, including 2 other cases of preventable blindness, 3 cases of cerebral palsy, and 2 cases of severe developmental delays. Maria Santos, the nurse who had originally agreed to testify against Martinez, came forward again after Santos's courtroom confession. When I saw that brave little girl standing up for truth, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore, she explained. They threatened my pension and my family's jobs. But some things are more important than financial security. With Maria's testimony and the evidence Santos provided, the case against Dr. Martinez became overwhelming. He was arrested on charges of medical malpractice, bribery, conspiracy, and falsifying medical records. The civil trial resumed 3 weeks later, but it was merely a formality. With the criminal evidence on the table, Dr. Martinez's team quickly agreed to a settlement. St. Vincent's Hospital was ordered to pay $5 million in compensatory damages to our family, plus an additional $2 million in punitive damages. They also agreed to fund Sofia's experimental treatment in Switzerland and to establish a $10 million fund to compensate other families who had been victimized by Martinez's malpractice. But beyond the money, there was a deeper sense of justice. Dr. Martinez was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and permanently banned from practicing medicine. St. Vincent's Hospital was placed under federal oversight and required to implement new safety protocols to prevent future abuses. Daniel Santos underwent the most remarkable transformation of all. After pleading guilty to corruption charges, he served 18 months in a minimum security facility. Upon his release, he established a nonprofit legal organization specifically designed to help immigrant families fight medical malpractice cases. Sofia Chen saved my soul, he told reporters. She showed me that it's never too late to choose truth over lies, compassion over cruelty. Santos became our family's closest friend and Sofia's biggest advocate. He personally handled 6 other cases against Dr. Martinez's victims and won substantial settlements for all of them. The story of Sofia's testimony became national news. The footage of her pointing to the angel and Santos falling to his knees was viewed millions of times online. Religious leaders across the country cited Sofia's words as evidence of divine intervention in human affairs. Skeptics argued that Sofia couldn't possibly have seen an angel, that her insights about people were just lucky guesses, that the whole thing was an elaborate hoax designed to win sympathy from the jury. But those of us who witnessed it firsthand knew we had experienced something beyond ordinary human understanding. Sofia had somehow accessed a level of truth and compassion that transcended normal childhood development. 6 months after the trial, Sofia began experimental treatment at the Institute for Advanced Ophthalmology in Zurich, Switzerland. The treatment involved stem cell therapy designed to regenerate damaged optic nerves. Dr. Hans Müller, who headed Sofia's treatment team, was amazed by her case. "In 30 years of treating vision loss, I have never encountered a patient with Sofia's combination of challenges and strengths," he told us. "Her blindness seems to have awakened neural pathways that we don't fully understand." The treatment was partially successful. Sofia regained about 40% of her vision, enough to see shapes, colors, and movement, though not enough for detailed sight. But remarkably, she chose to continue wearing her dark glasses most of the time. "I can see more clearly with my heart than with my eyes," she explained to Dr. Müller. "The glasses help me focus on what really matters." Sofia's story inspired a movement of families fighting medical malpractice. Her testimony was entered into congressional records as evidence supporting healthcare reform legislation. Medical schools across the country began using her case as a teaching tool about the importance of ethical patient care. Most importantly, Sofia herself grew into an even more remarkable young person. At age 11, she was accepted into a prestigious program for gifted children, where she excelled in music, mathematics, and what her teachers called emotional intelligence. She learned to play piano at a concert level and began composing her own pieces. Her music was described by critics as hauntingly beautiful and spiritually transcendent. But perhaps Sofia's greatest gift was her ability to help other children who had experienced trauma. Families from across the country sought her out, hoping that her insights could help their own children heal from difficult experiences. "Sofia has a gift for seeing into people's hearts," explained Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a child psychologist who worked with Sofia. "She can identify pain, fear, and hope in ways that most adults never develop. It's as if her blindness opened doorways to human understanding that the rest of us can't access." 3 years after the trial, Daniel Santos invited our family to his wedding. He had met a woman named Catherine, also a lawyer, who worked with refugees and asylum seekers. "Sofia," he told her at the wedding, "gave me the courage to become the person I was meant to be, instead of the person my pain had made me." Santos and Catherine now have 2 children of their own, and Sofia is their honorary aunt. Santos often says that his children will grow up knowing that truth and compassion are more powerful than anger and revenge because of Sofia's example. Today, Sofia is 12 years old and continues to amaze everyone who meets her. She has written a book about her experiences titled Seeing with the Heart, which became a bestseller and is being used in schools across the country to teach children about empathy and justice. The $7 million we received from the settlement has been carefully invested to ensure Sofia's future financial security, but more importantly, we used part of it to establish the Sofia Chen Foundation, which provides legal and financial assistance to families fighting medical malpractice cases. In the past 3 years, the foundation has helped 47 families achieve successful outcomes in cases that seemed hopeless. We work specifically with immigrant families and low-income families who might otherwise be unable to afford the legal representation necessary to fight powerful medical institutions. Dr. Martinez served 4 years of his 12-year sentence before dying of a heart attack in federal prison. Even at the end, he reportedly never admitted guilt or expressed remorse for the children he had harmed. But his legacy lives on in the reforms his case inspired. Medical licensing boards across the country tightened their oversight procedures. Hospitals implemented new protocols for monitoring physician behavior and preventing the kind of systematic abuse that Martinez had perpetrated. St. Vincent's Hospital was eventually sold to a nonprofit organization that specializes in serving low-income communities. Under new management, it has become a model for ethical healthcare delivery. Maria Santos, the nurse whose testimony proved crucial to our case, retired with full benefits and has become a vocal advocate for healthcare workers who witness misconduct. Sofia Chen taught me that staying silent in the face of wrongdoing makes you complicit in that wrongdoing. She often says in her speeches to nursing conferences. The most lasting impact of Sofia's story, however, has been on the thousands of people who heard her testimony and were inspired to make changes in their own lives. Letters pour in every week from people who say that Sofia's words helped them find the courage to leave abusive relationships, report workplace misconduct, stand up to bullies, or simply treat others with more kindness and respect. Your daughter showed us that children can be wiser than adults, that blindness can reveal truth, and that angels appear in the darkest moments to guide us toward light, wrote one woman whose letter we received last month. Whether Sofia actually saw an angel that day in the courtroom is a question that will probably never be answered definitively, but what cannot be disputed is that her testimony changed lives, exposed corruption, delivered justice to multiple families, and inspired countless people to choose truth over lies. As for Sofia herself, she maintains that she did see an angel, and that angels continue to guide her work helping other children and families. Angels aren't magical beings with wings, she explained to a journalist last year. Angels are just people who choose to bring light into dark places. Anyone can be an angel if they're brave enough to tell the truth and help people who are hurting. When asked if she regrets being born blind, Sofia always gives the same answer. I wouldn't change anything about my life. My blindness taught me to see what really matters. Some people have perfect eyesight but are blind to love, truth, and justice. I'd rather see clearly with my heart than be blind to what really matters. This Christmas, Sofia will turn 13. She's working on her second book and learning to speak Mandarin so she can help Chinese families who face language barriers in the healthcare system. She still wears her dark glasses most of the time, still navigates the world primarily through sound and touch, still carries herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who she is and why she's here. And sometimes, when she thinks no one is watching, I still see her having quiet conversations with invisible friends who seem to fill her with joy and purpose. Whether those friends are angels, or simply the manifestation of Sofia's extraordinary spiritual intelligence, doesn't really matter to me anymore. What matters is that my daughter has become exactly who she was meant to be, a beacon of truth in a world that desperately needs her light. If you believe that children can change the world, leave a like. If you've ever had to fight for justice against impossible odds, share your story in the comments. And if you have faith that truth always prevails in the end, share this video with someone who needs to hear Sofia's message. Because sometimes hope comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes justice wears the face of an 8-year-old girl who sees angels. And sometimes the most powerful force in the world is a child brave enough to speak truth to power. The angel Sofia saw that day in the courtroom may or may not have been real in the way most people understand reality. But the changes her testimony created, the lives saved, the corruption exposed, the families helped, the hearts transformed, those are undeniably real. And in a world that often seems dark and hopeless, sometimes that's all the proof of angels we need.